This suspenseful case happened in the summer of 2024. It's an example of the coordinated work of different services from different states that kept 6-year-old Jo Brunette alive. But for little bright girl Erin Brunette, the killer's face was the last thing she saw in her life. The police and the FBI were only hours late. I'm sure those involved in the operation are still wondering if they could have made it in time. Let's move to the point. Callie Jo Brunette, 35, was a native of Loranger, Louisiana. She attended Loranger High School and was a member of the flag team. After high school, she attended Hammond Technical High School to study barbering and medical technology. She was descended from a proud farming family going back several generations, with deep roots in Louisiana. She was proud of her family and her town. She enjoyed this kind of measured life in touch with nature. She didn't hide the fact that she was a country girl and saw a lot of advantages in it. Every year in October, thousands of people came to Old Farmer's Day. This festival had been held on the Brunette farm since 1973. Music, food, unusual contests, and introductions to the work of old-school farmers, this festival left no one indifferent. Callie's daughters, 6-year-old Jo and 4-year-old Erin, looked forward to the festivities. Erin Nicole Brunette was born on October 28, 2019, in Covington, Louisiana. Erin was described as a little ball of fire, incredibly energetic. She had time for everything and was everywhere. Her favorite toy was a stuffed elephant, and she had a special bond with her older sister, Jo. Jo was 6 years old and adored her little sister, too. That's how they were always seen, Erin, Jo, and the toy elephant. They had lots of games together, and Erin always wanted to do what Jo did. For Callie, her daughters were the center of the universe. The big, tight-knit Brunette family had a close relationship. Jo and Erin grew up surrounded by grandparents, 2 great-grandmothers, aunts, uncles, and cousins. The summer of 2024 passed normally and peacefully for Callie and the children. Callie's ex-boyfriend, Daniel Callihan, appeared on the horizon, but it was nothing unusual. Although Callie and Daniel had broken up almost 13 years ago, he would occasionally reappear in her life and then disappear again. Daniel could be charming, and Callie and her family had no idea that he was the son of Kelly Wayne Drott, a man whose name had been infamous in the 1990s. Back in 1990, 18-year-old Rebecca Forbes didn't return home after attending an Italian festival in Independence. The police searched for Rebecca, and it was soon revealed that she had met Drott at the festival and got into his car. Drott beat her to death and dumped her body in the Tangipahoa River. Rebecca's body was found 3 weeks later. She had lain in the river for weeks on a pile of sand, and it was lucky they found her. Drott admitted to killing Forbes but always maintained that it was an accident. He pleaded guilty to manslaughter and received a 25-year sentence. However, he escaped from a New Orleans prison and went on the run with another woman, whom he later shot. While on the run, he also kidnapped a teenage girl and then shot himself when the police surrounded him. Of course, children aren't responsible for their parents' actions, and Daniel was a toddler when all this happened. But as it turned out, his father's fate had a profound effect on him. On the morning of Thursday, June 13, 2024, Callie's mother, Debbie, was worried because she had been trying to contact her daughter all morning and had gotten no response. She hadn't heard from Callie since the previous day, which was concerning. Callie had always been in close contact with her parents. Even though she lived a little farther down the street, they saw each other often and called daily. It was strange and unlike Callie to just stop returning her parents' calls. Debbie didn't wait long. At 8 a.m., she went to the house where Callie lived with her 2 daughters. When she got there, the first thing she noticed was that Callie's car, a Chrysler 200, was missing. Debbie was puzzled. Could Callie have gone somewhere so early, or had she not spent the night at home? Inside, the house greeted Debbie with silence. In the bedroom, Debbie saw a horrifying sight. Debbie found Callie lying dead, covered in numerous stab wounds. It was clear that Callie had suffered a brutal, violent attack. According to the autopsy, Callie was killed as a result of multiple forceful injuries. She had been stabbed multiple times in the head, neck, chest, and back. Some of the wounds on her arms were defensive. Callie had been fighting for her life. Unfortunately, the killer left her no chance to survive. It's hard to imagine what Debbie went through in that moment. Of course, it's the most horrific discovery one can make, especially when it involves one's own child. Just the thought of her granddaughters gave her the strength to pull herself together and start calling and searching for Jalie and Erin. Then another horrible discovery overtook her. Her granddaughters were missing. Debbie immediately called 911 to report the murder and the missing girls. An Amber Alert was immediately issued for the two missing girls, and a search was launched for the missing vehicle. It was believed that someone had broken into the home, killed Callie, and then kidnapped both of her young, defenseless daughters using the stolen car. The first thing investigators did was run the license plate number on the missing vehicle. They quickly learned that the vehicle was traveling north toward Jackson, Mississippi. Based on this, they were able to determine that on the evening of June 12, at 6 p.m., the car was in Byam, Mississippi. Police were also able to obtain surveillance footage from a McDonald's parking lot. The footage was taken on June 12, and in the footage, they saw a wanted car being driven by an unknown white male. At the time, the man was attempting to change a tire on the car in the parking lot. After looking closely at the footage, investigators noticed what appeared to be two children sitting in the back seat of the car while the man was attempting to change the tire. Investigators immediately realized that these were the two missing girls, Jalie and Erin. At the same time, back on June 12, a woman named Dixie Hemphill began receiving messages from C's Facebook account. The messages stated that it was actually her brother, Daniel Callihan. He said that he used C's account to send her a message, saying that he had done something bad and needed money for gas. He asked her to wire some money through Cash App, but she had a bad feeling about the whole thing. She knew her brother well, so instead of giving him the money, she alerted authorities to the reports. At that point, investigators began to connect the dots and discovered that Daniel Callihan, 36, may have been the one who killed C and kidnapped her two daughters. They also realized that the case was now crossing multiple states. So, police brought in the FBI and a U.S. Marshals task force to investigate. By June 13, just hours after the girls were reported missing, marshals began a search in Byam, Mississippi, which was the last known location of C's car. Pretty soon, an undercover officer spotted Daniel Callihan walking along Terry Road in Jackson. According to the officers, he looked like he was checking houses. Upon noticing the officers, he attempted to flee, but they managed to catch up with him and detain him. At this point, the officers saw that the little girls were not with him, so the frantic search for the girls continued. After detaining Daniel, the officers began searching a nearby road, Brewer Drive. On this road, they were approached by two civilians who said they had recently heard two children screaming from the woods about 50 yards behind a home on the same road. Witnesses directed the officers to this home, where they focused their search. The home was old and largely unfinished, with no permanent residents on the property. About 20 yards from the house, authorities found C's missing car. Further behind the house, in the woods, they found Erin and Jalie inside a pit. Of course, authorities were thrilled that they were able to find these two girls so quickly. They held their breath the entire time, hoping that both would be alive. Unfortunately, that was not the case. 6-year-old little Jalie was alive, but next to her, 4-year-old little Erin, unfortunately, was dead. Meanwhile, Jalie was taken away from the scene and brought to Mississippi Medical Center for recovery. When Daniel was brought to the station for questioning, he confessed almost immediately. Daniel told the officers that he stabbed C about 30 times in her house. He mentioned that he had wanted to kill C for a long time but didn't say why. According to Daniel's sister, they had dated about 13 years ago, but it's not clear why he still had any animosity or anger towards her. Especially since it seems like they haven't been together in 13 years. Kean also said that after stabbing Callie to death, he grabbed the two girls and put them in a car. He then drove with the girls over 100 miles to Mississippi, where he went to a house on Brewer Drive. When they got to the house, he said Erin and Jalie were crying. They were very upset and said they didn't want to stay with Daniel. Daniel eventually realized that law enforcement was on their way and looking for him, and that's when he decided to kill Erin. According to the Mississippi police chief, he believes Erin was strangled to death. We are waiting on the forensic pathologist, the medical examiner. I would assume, and this is clearly an assumption, that she possibly died from asphyxiation or suffocation, but we would have to wait on the medical examiner before releasing that information. I did not see any gunshot wounds or anything like that, so it appeared possibly suffocation, but that's yet to be determined, he said. Meanwhile, Daniel admitted that he decided not to kill 6-year-old Jalie because he wanted to keep her as a sex slave. At the same time, He killed her little sister because he knew the police were looking for him and they were closing in. It doesn't make any sense at all, nor do all of Daniel Callihan's actions. After the initial interrogation, Daniel was arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder and sexual battery. When he was taken into custody, he spoke to the media, where he openly confessed to what he had done. He said that, unfortunately, while sober and taking Lexapro with no drugs in his system, he killed Erin. He said he had no reason for what he did, but he claimed he had borderline or multiple personality disorder. He went on to talk about Lexapro and his mental health. He also said he was on suicide watch, although he was not suicidal, but then said he was completely sorry for what he had done and that he deserved lethal injection. While all of this was going on, Daniel was in jail making all of these confessions. Law enforcement was still investigating the location where little Erin was found dead. They announced that the only way to get to the location of this house is to know the area. It is a dead end that is in the middle of nowhere, so one will not just stumble upon it. Authorities then announced that there were signs of possible human trafficking at the house. Small cages were found on the property as well as wire fencing. According to Daniel's sister, Daniel has been troubled all his life and is a master criminal. She said she had contacted the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation a year earlier to report that she believed he was involved in the death of a missing man. She also said he confessed to her to molesting a child at one point. The case went to a grand jury, but the evidence was not enough to indict him, and he was released. This is his first affair that he's been caught red-handed. I would love to defend my brother, and I'd love to say it was the Lexapro, but it's not the Lexapro. He knows what he's doing. I met her kids twice. That doesn't even... I feel so bad for her parents.
Like, why?
I need someone to take us seriously because look what happened. And y'all think in Lincoln County that there was no merit to him killing anyone, but yet they diagnosed him with seeing hallucinations and being schizophrenic and just let him walk up out of them doors. Classified as a serial killer. And we even tried to tell MBI about this, that he wanted to be a prodigy of his dad and he was writing his own book. Except he was going to succeed his dad. The developments in this case were remembered by many people because of the strong words spoken by Jackson Police Chief Joseph Wade. Daniel Callihan and Victoria Cox brought horror and unthinkable terror to the city of Jackson. These individuals were a threat to those kids, which means they were a threat to all of our children. What I saw in the woods in South Jackson is something you never want to see as a chief and as a father. We will hold these individuals accountable. After a long silence in this confusing matter, on the 3rd of January 2025, United States Attorney Dwayne Evans announced that 37-year-old Daniel Wayne Callihan from Louisiana has been indicted on 2 counts of kidnapping resulting in death and transportation of a minor in interstate commerce with intent to engage in criminal sexual conduct. On count 1, Callihan faces a mandatory minimum sentence of life in prison, up to 3 years of supervised release, and a fine of up to $250,000. On count 2, Callihan faces a mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years in prison, up to life in prison, at least 5 years of supervised release, and a fine of up to $250,000. A conviction on count 2 may also require Callihan to register as a sex offender. Attorney Evans reiterated that an indictment is merely an accusation and that guilt must be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. There is no doubt that Callihan deserved every single count of this indictment and more. Unfortunately, this will not bring back the family of the murdered Callie and Erin Brunette. Rest in peace, Callie and Erin.